Hello, everybody. So, on December 25th, 1982, I made a startling discovery. And so there I am, making my startling discovery. I had just opened up this present. It's the Castle Grayskull. And on the label it said, "To Bret, from Jesus." So, I was astounded. Santa only gave me a pair of socks that Christmas. So, and it blew my mind because I distinctly remember sending a letter to Santa Claus saying, "Dear Santa, I would really love all of the action playset made by Mattel. He-Man in particular is something that I'm interested in." So, of course, like, now at this point, Jesus is giving me the Castle Grayskull, and I'm like, okay. And looking back on that, I just imagine, reconstructing what I must have gone through. I'm thinking that somehow Santa was, in that big board meeting that they have, and he's like, whoa, he's reading his mail, and he says, "Jesus, this kid wants all the action playset from Mattel, and but he's in New York, and he's got bare feet, and it's cold up there." So Jesus is like, whoa, Santa, slow down. I mean, this is Christmas. It's about celebrating the good things in life, like the power of Grayskull. So, they debate the issue a little bit, and they come to some sort of compromise. Jesus is like, "Look, Santa, you go ahead and give him what he needs, and I'm going to give him what he wants this year. And it's going to be everything's going to be all well and good." So, however it happened, I was astounded, and I began to wonder, what is going on? What is happening? Because how could Santa have known? And things just didn't add up. I was very suspicious. My mother had been talking to me all year about how, you don't need that stuff. It's going to be too expensive, and you don't want that. And so maybe put it on your Santa list, but don't get your hopes up. She said it with a smile, of course, but it astonished me. So I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, but eventually I think I sort of figured it out, maybe. But it's with that story in mind that I kind of want to talk to you a little bit tonight about just what I do with my research. Just sort of thinking outside the box about something called genre. So this is why I called it genre-bending thoughts on realities. Someone can think of a better title for me and then tell me afterwards. So what is genre? Okay, well, it's the French word that means kind, or type, or class. And we employ it in English all the time in literary genres, film genres, music genres. Okay, so we sort of throw that word around, and okay, what does that really mean? Well, from a theoretical standpoint, genre is the language conceptual framework with which we communicate and understand our experiences, understand our realities, essentially. We have to do this, in order to communicate. But really, communication, it's sort of the building blocks of what we think of is real. It's essentially our reality is only available or understandable to us because we have language. But we can envision a scenario where we might exist in the natural world and be able to experience things without language at all, right? We can envision that. But to understand what we've experienced, we need language. To express or communicate what we've experienced, we need some sort of structured expression to be able to just emote and give and express. And to envision the scenario of being out there in the wild, experiencing without language, we need language to understand that too. So language becomes sort of the building blocks of everything that we know. So it might be easier to say that all reality is social reality. Maybe an easier way for us to frame it, generically speaking, for right now. So let's see. When we think about reality generally, we can start to think generically about it by noticing where the boundaries are, where the boundaries of things are. We draw lines. For example, we draw a line between what we know to be real, what actually happens in the actual world, naturally occurring, and between that and what doesn't occur, what happens in our minds or in our dreams or what we artificially manipulate things to be. We can see a literary model of these genre boundaries as well. You can see it in music, in film as well. Genre becomes sort of this way in which we are defining things. It almost feels that way, doesn't it? Like when we're using genres, it's almost as if the genre is now this category that defines what something is and what it's not. It's the conceptual building blocks, the elements of what we know something to be. But of course, when we think about it from the theoretical standpoint, that's sort of imagined. We're imagining that. Okay. So really, in reality, genres are just the boundaries are all mixed up, and it's an emergent thing that it happens when we're in the mode of expression, the moment, the actual moment of being that we can't ever not be in. This is where all of these genres are coming into play. And so really, we can draw a circle around all of that conceptually as our reality. Everything is real. So sometimes if we just change one genre feature, we can turn an established notion of reality on its head. And in other instances, if we only have one feature that's similar to other things, we have enough of a stable connotation to be able to communicate that idea. For example, Eurotrance music. Who the hell knows what that is? But if I said it sort of has a connotation, and you're like, oh yeah, Eurotrance, right? Yeah, that's great. So that's the general idea of genre, and just sort of the way that I think about it. In the digital world, we have just an amazing thing happening. Genre sort of plays itself out in really odd and interesting ways. It's part of our daily lives. The internet, too, it seems to have this agency, this individual agency that allows us to just, make things happen. And you have a voice, and you are creative. But what also happens in that is that there are so many genres on such a mass scale, everyone is interacting with on such a mass scale, that it actually tends to force things into those categories as well. So instead of people, finally funneling themselves into these DIY projects, you have a million views of people doing response videos on YouTube to Bad Romance or something to that effect. All very awesome, all very creative, but we start to see trends where people are moving back into more categorizable trends. Okay? So Eurotrance music, we'll look at this example again. And so we can think about what a genre is, and when we really start to look at it, really look at it close, we start to see the dynamic nature of the thing, and how Eurotrance is more than just a thing, a style, with all of these specific musical features. It's an actual dynamic experience that happens in time. There are all these sort of contextualities and intertextualities that become a part of this experience. And all of that is wrapped up in the generic idea, the genre. Okay, all experience is shaped dialogically. This is where it gets really interesting to me. Because everything that's happening is happening in a moment of dialogue. Whether you're thinking about something in your language conceptual framework, or whether you're communicating something with someone else, this is the dialogue that is taking place. And it shapes the way we think about things. It shapes our hopes, our fears, our desires, our emotions. So I'm going to tell you a story. So, guy goes to the doctor. Guy's name is Joe. He's wearing a red shirt. Joe just spent the last hour researching his symptoms on the internet. So, Joe, he's a pretty smart guy. He goes in there, sits down. Doctor says, "Hi, Joe." Says, "Hi, Doc." Mr. Joe, what seems to be the problem? Well, this is what I think is going on. And so Joe has a running narrative in his mind about all of his symptoms and what they mean, what's going on. The doctor, for his part, he's kind of used to people doing this sort of internet research thing by now, and he's sort of trying to be patient with Joe, and the dance goes on. But ultimately, what's happening there is that these two gentlemen are talking back and forth about trying to find a shared space of understanding about this thing, symptoms, okay? So ultimately, it's more than that. It's not just the dialogue, but where it's happening, all of the contextual elements of that are taking place are all wrapped up into a generic idea of the thing, okay? Jazz, for example. Jazz is a great example. The history of jazz, the original Dixieland Jazz Band, they go to New Orleans and they appropriate some music, and then they go to New York and they cut a record. And so the object permanence of the record seems to suggest that this is what jazz is all of a sudden. It's a codified genre. To the point where the band leader, Nick Baraka, would go around saying that he invented jazz, right? Okay. So here's a clip. I'm just going to play a little bit. This is from the 2000 film.
All right, boy. Follow my lead. Hello. Who's the honcho around here? I am. Who are you? Sir, I'm Jordan Rivers, and these here are the Soggy Bottom Boys out of Cottonwood, Mississippi. Songs of salvation to sap the soul. We hear that you pay your money to sing into a can.
What the hell? You boys do Negro songs?
Well, sir, we are Negroes, all except for our company, the fellow that plays the guitar.
Yeah, well, I don't record Negro songs. No, I'm looking for some old time material. See, people can't seem to get enough of it. Since we started broadcasting it on the patio down on Flower House, so thank you for stopping by.
The Soggy Bottom Boys have been steeped in old-timey material. Heck, we're silly with it, ain't we, boys?
That's right. That's right. But we ain't really Negroes.
Oh, except our company does.
I've seen trouble all my day.
So this is an example of a genre-bending fiction, because we have these gentlemen who are characters in a story that is a reinterpretation of Homer's epic Odyssey, and they are walking into a place. They're coming up with a fictional representation of themselves in order to sell music to make some money. And what's interesting about this too is that the example breaks its own fourth wall by the Foggy Mountain Boys, who are the actual group that recorded that song in this film. They had so many awards, it was such a great hit that they ended up making lots of money. It was really famous. So we're going to advance ahead So what's the point? The point is that when we start thinking outside the box, when we start thinking about genre and language in new and interesting ways, we get to the heart of the matter. For me, the heart of the matter is the story itself. The story, the idea, not that language somehow hides some sort of hidden, discoverable truth, or that you can use language to come up with a box of immutable signs about who we are as a people. But it's the story itself that matters. And when we think about things outside the box, we think about genres in different ways, we start to see that the story really matters. So I believe that I'm out of time.